After more than half a century, one of the world's longest ruling governments faces possible defeat. Malaysia is heading to the polls at a time where charges of corruption, political violence, and racism could see the Prime Minister and his ruling National Front coalition lose power. But can the opposition offer a credible alternative? I'm Steve Chow, and on this edition of 101 East, we ask whether elections in Malaysia will lead to historic change. This week on 101 East, we're in the capital, Kuala Lumpur, to debate the key election issues in what could be the closest race in Malaysian history. The political parties are here, along with an audience of voters that represent the wide dichotomy that is Malaysia. Before we begin the discussion, Drew Ambrose sets the scene for us from Penang, a predominantly Chinese enclave that underlines the dramatic political shifts we've seen taking place in this Southeast Asian nation.
Malaysia's opposition coalition are celebrating 5 years of power in Penang, one of 5 provinces they won in the 2008 poll. This year's election could be closer, with the same issues dominating the country.
I think the most important issue is the economy and the corruption issue in Malaysia.
An opposition victory could see Anwar Ibrahim emerge as Prime Minister. He's a former Deputy PM whose career was marred by sodomy allegations.
He's very capable and he's very knowledgeable about the economies in Malaysia. Has been the deputy for a while as well, and I think he's fair to everybody as well. I know it's not easy to be fair in Malaysia because of different races and culture.
UMNO, the main party in the ruling National Front, has won every poll since 1957 independence. Their leader, Najib Razak, became Prime Minister after they lost a 2/3 parliamentary majority in the last election. Critics say their policies, which favour Malays, led to the poor result, as it fueled racial disharmony with the Indian and Chinese minorities. To claw back votes, he's abolished controversial security laws, delayed a goods and services tax, and increased wages for civil servants.
Under the leadership of Najib, all the people get the benefits from him, not only the lower rank, all of us get it.
In the election lead-up, the government is handing out $150 welfare handouts across Malaysia, pleasing people like Nuria Muhammad, a Malay villager on Penang's outskirts.
They have done a lot for the country by improving the standard of living through handouts and free health care.
In Penang, the opposition has used their power to abolish the government policies that gave preference to ethnic Malays in government contracts, scholarships and civil service jobs.
The opposition is awarding tenders more openly to all the races, so this is very good.
Albert Low runs one of the main street food markets.
The national opposition has brought a lot of big projects to Penang, but the federal government is not giving enough funds.
Faisal Akasha, a Malay stall owner, says the opposition is not as fair as they say, using open tenders to create expensive housing projects and jobs for their supporters.
The national opposition only care about the Chinese community and big business in Penang. Little businesses and Malays don't get any assistance or open tenders.
Big business brings wealth and glitzy bars to Penang. They're popular with 3 million first-time voters, middle-class kids whose wages aren't keeping pace with the rising cost of living.
What we want from the government, we want free education, okay, we want work opportunity, and then we don't want so high car tax.
A good sales pitch matters. They account for 27% of voters. These young Malaysians could be the game changer in what could be the country's tightest election race ever.
Drew Ambrose touched on some of the public discontent that some would say has the government on the back foot. To debate the issues with us is Nur Jazlan Mohammed, a government member from the National Front. Here we have Tony Phua, a member of the DAP, one of the many parties that make up the opposition coalition. And over here, Ibrahim Sufyan, a political commentator from the Merdeka Center for Opinion Research. Thank you all for joining us. My first question goes to you, Nur Jazlan. Your government says it needs more time to make good on its promises, but it's had 55 years to run this country. What difference will a few more years make?
First of all, we've done it well. But in 2008, we have realized that people have become more matured and demand changes. So we need time to make sure that these changes can be implemented.
And Tony, we've got a question for you from the audience. This one from Natalie in the front row here.
What sets you apart from the current government?
I think what sets us apart from the current government is actually very straightforward. We believe strongly in eliminating corruption. We believe strongly in clean, transparent, and competent governments. And we believe that we can do that by ensuring that all our procurement contracts, all our privatization projects are tendered in a competitive and open fashion for all businesses and not be restricted to particular elite groups and those connected to the ruling parties. I think that's the underlying essence of our economic administration, and we believe that with greater political freedoms, elimination of various laws that are oppressive for the people, for example, the media laws, the peaceful assembly laws, we will actually create a more vibrant democracy and economy for Malaysia.
Ibrahim, I have a question for you. You are a pollster. You've taken the pulse of the nation. How close is this race likely going to be?
In the 222-seat National Parliament, 65 seats can be won with under 3% of the margin. It shows how close things are. And in part, this is due to the large influx of new voters and greater access to the internet, which has opened up all kinds of information, made it available to the largely young electorate.
And building on what you just said, some would say that part of the reason for the current discontent is that voters now know much more than they used to. In the past, traditionally, the state media was controlled by members of the ruling coalition. But what has changed, as Ibrahim has mentioned, is the introduction of the internet, the fact that the public can now access social websites to find out more about what their politicians are up to. So my question to you, the audience, and feel free to jump in here, is what are your perspectives on how the internet may have changed your understanding of politics here, and has it changed your view on who to vote for? I understand we have a mass communications student here, Ailina. Ailina, go ahead. How have you traditionally viewed the control by the government in terms of the media, and at the same time, how has the internet changed your perspectives of things?
Most youngsters, they don't really focus on the traditional media. They tend to look at the new media, and new media being the social media and like Twitter, Facebook and all that. So we can see the traditional media, we can read the papers, but at the same time we have access to the news that we are served in the internet, and it is two different things. So as young voters, it has changed the way we think, and it has also influenced the way we vote.
Well, Nur Jazlan, do you believe that the media, the conventional media, whether it be newspapers and TV stations, are free and fair, that the opposition gets a fair shake when it comes to coverage?
I think they are. Printed press, okay.
No, there's a lot of laughter here.
No, because...
Can you truly say that?
Social media and the internet is free and fair.
You said the social media and the internet, but is the state media
I like
run
to pick,
by the
I like to
coalition?
pick the point of one of our panelists who said the young people today are matured enough to know, which story is right or wrong. And they have two sides that they can actually ponder upon and make their decisions. So there is media freedom in the country.
What about the older generation that don't access the internet, where they rely on the TV3, the state-owned media, as well as the state-owned papers for their information?
Access to media, you have it, right? The older generation prefer the printed press. The younger generation prefer the internet. But you have freedom, full stop.
Tony, I have a question for you here.
Sure.
If the opposition did, in fact, come into power, would you ban politicians or political parties from owning media establishments?
Media licenses should be given freely. What has happened today is media licenses are only given to media outlets owned by the ruling government political party.
So are you saying that you would allow for an even split of ownership in terms of,
Anyone can set up a newspaper. They should not require an official license from the Home Ministry.
But how does that deal with concerns over propaganda? Why not just ban politicians from owning them outright?
I think it is okay for different papers to give different editorial opinions. the Barisan Nasional component parties can have their papers, Pakatan can have their papers, independent newspapers agencies can have their papers. Now what's the problem is only Barisan component parties can own mainstream papers, and that is restricting the flow of information on the printed press, as well as the television organs.
Okay, Tony, thank you. Let's move on. One of the things people do see a lot in this country, in the Malaysian media, is this picture of racial harmony. Malaysia is divided up mainly by 3 ethnic groups: Malays, Chinese, Indians, and they drive the politics here. The government has made a big push to show this view of racial harmony. We've seen this, of course, in the very good, I might add, Malaysia Truly Asia advertisement. Many people around the world know it, and I'm sure you all know the jingle. I want to take a look at a bit of that now. How accurate is this picture of racial harmony? Specifically, does the government ensure that all races are treated equally? All right, I see someone reacting here in the second row.
What you're seeing is basically a Disneyland version of the country. And the reality is, it's legally, constitutionally, this country treats different ethnic groups differently. And that cannot be denied. And I think over the years, what has happened is that an understanding, perhaps, that certain measures are required for economic fairness, etc. I think it's gone so far, and that it's become an issue which is deeply unfair. And on top of that, politicians constantly use race to divide people, to the point that, you know, they say, if you vote for us, we will save you. If you vote for the other side, you will be destroyed. So there is no such thing as true, meaningful racial unity in this country.
Does anyone disagree or agree? Go ahead.
Totally agree with you. There is no truth in that. I've lived abroad for 17 years. I've never seen those Indians playing that drum in Malaysia, Truly Asia.
Nur Jasmine, I turn this back to you. We've heard from some comments from people in the audience who say that, in fact, the ruling coalition at times uses race for its own political benefits. Many times, politicians of the ruling government have raised the specter of the 1960s race riots, saying that if the opposition is voted in, then the 1960s race riots that saw hundreds, perhaps thousands killed, will return once again. Is that fair to do that, or is that just simply scaremongering, considering that Malaysia today is a modern society?
Well, I don't agree with that statement. I think every political party plays the race card. Everyone plays race-based politics because that's how we win votes. My contention is this: the Prime Minister has instituted changes, mainly being the One Malaysia brand, to remind everybody that we are still a multiracial country. I'd like to take my friend on the left-hand side. He was saying about the inclusion of the Indian drums in the Malaysia Truly Asia ad. If we truly need to represent all races equally, we have dozens of races, dozens of religions that predominate this country. That Malaysia Truly Asia ad will be a long ad if we had to treat everybody equally. So we have to make the representation that closely represents what Malaysia is, irrespective of the actual race or religion. That Malaysia is a multi-racial, multi-religious country that needs to come to one common platform, which is what the Prime Minister is trying to do now with the One Malaysia program.
But you're saying, though, that certain races would get preferential treatment.
How do we compress these dozens of religions and dozens of races into one common platform? So some people may feel that they're not being represented.
Okay, Nur Jasmine, thank you very much. We have a comment from here to the right
My
of
opinion
me.
to that statement would be, isn't that the whole point of democracy? the fact that each and every ethnic proportions has to be fully justified and looked after. I mean, the comment actually scares me as a minority in this country, where when they say, when a certain group might be left behind due to the preferences to the bigger
perception.
There's a gentleman in the back, in the very far back here.
Right.
In the front.
I would rather feel that Malaysia would only prosper if we abolish race-based politics. Why are we calling ourselves Indians, Chinese, and Malays? Why are we not identifying ourselves as Malaysians? Why are we still playing all these race-based discriminations in this country? All of us are Malaysians. We are born here and bred here. Race-based politics. It has to be done away with if you want to see a united Malaysia.
I see some more nodding in agreement here.
I would also say that political, based on the racial part, is not only at the political stances today, but it starts from schools as well. We have a special school for Chinese, we have a special school for Indians, and we have a special schools only for Malay. And only when they reach university level, they meet each other. And the problem lies when at the young age begins, when they not try to see each other, understand the way they live, and it will become more problem when they become adults.
The lady here in the front here.
I'd like to add that it's actually the institutionalization of policies which are race-based, which is the problem, because not only do you have policies that discriminate on race, but these policies create conditions which are very conducive for the policies to be made use of in the name of race, and that leads to things like corruption and sort of financial outflows that have been happening in the country, which perhaps our Member of Parliament can comment on.
Corruption happens everywhere. Even in a developed country, it happens. You read it. Yep. The thing is, as we move forward, as we strengthen our institutions, our controls, then corruption reduces. That is the aim that we are aiming at now. Reducing corruption through the changes in the government and also the economy.
Under the current Prime Ministership, we have achieved the lowest rank for the corruption perception rankings index ever in our history. Over the last 4 years, our corruption perception rankings have continued to fall despite the government transformation program, which is supposed to address one of the key issues being corruption.
And let me wade in here with some figures, if I can. Transparency International last year ranked Malaysia as the worst country in the world when it comes to corporate bribery, specifically. They interviewed a number of business executives, and they said that 50% of all deals were lost to competitors because the competitors paid bribes. Critics say that the biggest reason for that is that the ruling government supports this culture of corruption. Now, Nur Jazlan, you sit on the board of many government-run enterprises, do you not? Yes. Would you concede the point, though, that there are members in the ruling government that are corrupt, that have been lining their own pockets, lining the pockets of their friends and relatives?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that, before maybe the controls, the institutions were not as tight. Now we are tightening it up.
But what about all the charges that are in court at the moment? There's been one conviction that's being appealed. There's a number of other ones that are going through the system now. Some major ones. I don't want to go into specifics because we all know them here. But can you say truly that...
Isn't it good? For the first time, action is being taken. People are being taken to court, charged, and convicted. That's change. We move forward, but it takes time.
Sorry, just to add on the points of corruption. In 2010, the Global Financial Integrity Report stated that up to 200 billion ringgit of illicit funds flowed out of Malaysia, and this is the top 3 in the world. So to compare Malaysia against the region, we're number 2 in Asia after China. It is the highest amount of illicit outflows per capita. So we're talking about not just corruption in-house, but corruption that's flowing out of the country. And what does this say about the financial situation of the country? We're already facing a fiscal deficit, a very, very high debt to GDP ratio, almost bridging the statutory limit. What does this say about the financial health of the Malaysian economy, really?
And Ibrahim, what does this say then about the financial health of the country? Has corruption set this country back? At a time, years ago, Malaysia was mentioned in the same breath as South Korea, as Singapore, as an Asian economic tiger. Has corruption put Malaysia back?
looking at how the public processes this information, we can see a dichotomy, and the dichotomy cuts across the digital divide. And it's also largely an urban-rural divide, and it plays into the politics of Malaysia. Large numbers of voters, Malaysians who are living in urban areas, regardless of whatever ethnic group they belong to, generally have a heightened sense of awareness about the problem of corruption. Our polling center has been tracking the sentiments over the last 4 years. And over the last 18 months or so, the issue of corruption is the highest issue that people want the government to take a handle of, to tackle, much higher than other issues related to, say, the economy or crime or other issues. So corruption is issue number one, and the public is aware of it. How does it affect the country's economy? How does it affect the public's mood as we go into this election? That's where things are mixed, and that's where the digital divide comes into the picture. Voters that are having greater access to information see this as problem number one, and is likely going to use this as an issue that motivates them to vote, likely for change. And those that are in the rural areas that are more cut off continue to see the government as a benefactor, the government that provides aid and financial services to them to get through a hard life. So I think you have different points of view with respect to the Malaysian public. It's not all clear-cut. I think, yeah.
And on the point of it's not all clear-cut, Tony, could the opposition do any better? The opposition has said that they want high-level ministers to declare their public assets. Right. But would you go so far as to say that if you came into power, you would ensure that every member of parliament from your coalition would make available to the public their assets?
Our position at this point in time is anyone appointed to executive positions, that means cabinet ministers or executive councillors in the respective state governments, will have to declare assets. And we have done that for the states of Penang and Selangor, where we actually rule. And in terms of readiness to actually rule Malaysia, I think we are ready because we have proven that in Penang and Selangor in particular, where we have managed the states in a very competent fashion, not only in the sense that we have given out a lot more welfare and benefits and investments to the people in the respective states, we have actually managed to increase income as well as record surpluses on an annual basis for these particular states.
So the opposition is saying for the key members of parliament, they would ensure public assets. I'd like to see a show of hands here. How many people here in the audience would like politicians to make available their assets in terms of how much they make, what homes they own, that sort of thing?
And their wives.
Yeah. And their wives as well. And their family members and their children.
Okay, I think Tony said members of the executive. That means people who actually have power declare. We have already done that anyway, with ministers and deputy ministers.
They declare to the Prime Minister, not to the public.
Yeah, well, we have declared it's there. The information is there. It's with the MACC, is there. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I'd like to refute Tony's proposal that the asset declaration is enough. I would say that political party funding, which we have been discussing for the last 4.5 years, but never has it come to a conclusion, because the opposition also doesn't want to tackle this issue. Transparent political funding also must be tackled as well. They are not willing to do that as well.
We are willing to do it. We are willing to do it.
Even on your manifesto, you can't decide whether the Islamic Party wants an Islamic state,
Barisan Nasional's manifesto,
or the DAP doesn't want an Islamic state. You can't decide on one common platform.
You know what? We have to move on. We're really short on time. Just going more on the issue of government spending. During the lead up to this election, we've seen a massive amount of money diverted to handouts for the poor. And often we've seen ruling politicians tie that directly in to vote specifically for them. The Prime Minister himself did just that very thing at a party candidate's rally a little while ago. I just want to go to that video now.
Okay, the understanding is quite simple. You help me, I help you. I made this deal with the people in Ulu Selangor. They wanted 3 million ringgit for a Chinese school. I said to them, Barisan Nasional wins on Sunday, On Monday, I asked the check to be prepared. They said yes.
You help me, we help you. In many countries around the world, that would be considered illegal. Noor Jazlin, we go to you. Should this sort of thing continue, do you see this as vote buying?
Let me just go straight to the cash payout of 500 ringgit, which under the program called BRIM. That is in response to people's requests on how to reduce or alleviate their cost of living. So we have done that. It's money directly to the people. And we have done, this is the second, this year is the second time we're doing it. So therefore, it is not responding to elections, it's responding to what people want. And we have given it directly to the people.
Okay, I want to take a question here from Pravin. Pravin, you're a political researcher. Pravin, go ahead.
We've seen a lot of this vote buying and lavish promises made by both the government and the People's Alliance. Now, my question is, aren't these populist policies capable of potentially bankrupting the nation?
Who would like to field that question? Tony?
Yep. I think it's all right to be populist as long as they are responsible. The Penang State government gives out 100 ringgit yearly ever since we got voted in, not just before elections. Ever since we got voted in, 100 ringgit yearly because we have achieved record surpluses every year. So if the state can afford it, and if the state has gained from its government, then it is right to return some of this money direct to the people who are in need. This were to the elderly. So it really depends on the circumstances or how the award is being done. And what's more important is that as the government of the day, you cannot decide whether to help the person or not, depending on whether the person voted for you. So you cannot say, for example, I'm voted into federal government, but because this particular constituency didn't vote for me, they get nothing. Once I'm with the federal government, as long as there's a need that this constituency need for flood mitigation, for schools that are in need of repair, the government must fulfill its role as the people's government and not just paying to states which have supported that particular party.
There are other concerns about whether this will be free and fair elections. Specifically, there have been many concerns in terms of voter lists. We sent Drew Ambrose on an investigation to look at some of these claims and also to look at this rising public anger that has spilled out onto the streets about perceived dirty electioneering.
Tan Kee Xiong is a National Front Party member and lives in the hotly contested seat, Selangor. 50 voters are enrolled at his house, but none live here. He claims many are local squatters who stole his address to access free government services. But others suspect Mr. Xiong registered them.
If you were to say that, then excuse me, I say it's wrong. We don't have proof.
The opposition won Selangor last election, but concede this kind of voter fraud could lead to their defeat.
Out of the 600,000 new voters, more than 24% of these people, new voters, couldn't be traced.
In Penang, Emily says she was enrolled to vote without her knowing and feels this is a case of identity theft.
Well, I don't know how long I've been registered for, and there is a chance someone could have voted on my behalf in the last elections.
Since 2007, Malaysians have taken to the street 3 times in the biggest protests this country has ever seen. Organised by a group of NGOs called Bersih, the rallies for fair elections were attended by all races. 5 years on, the public push to clean up the system continues.
Now, I'd like to get a show of hands here from the audience. How many of you participated in the rallies for free and fair elections? Okay, a number of you. And my question to the general audience, how do you feel the government handled these protests? There were times where thousands were arrested. Some talked about police violence, the use of tear gas. Your responses? Gentleman in the front.
I think the last Bersih rally, the attacks on the media by the police force was most telling. It was a government that lost control, lost its handle, its moral high ground in dealing with the Bersih rally and the popular demand. And the attacks on the media were of a failed initiative. It was the idea that somehow they could control information if they attacked journalists. It didn't work, and it backfired on them.
Gentleman beside you wants to make a comment.
I feel there's a major difference in a rally and a riot. And I think the way it was portrayed was more focused on a riot instead of a really safe and peaceful rally. So again, it might go down to the way media have portrayed it. But again, as I said, the new media, alternate media, have actually given a fresh view on what exactly happened.
This riot has been used by the opposition to their own political interests, not to ask for the fairness of the election.
Ibrahim, despite the controversies over many issues about free and fair elections, corruption, the popularity of the rating of the Prime Minister, Najib Razak, remains very high. What would you say have been some of the moves by the government that have been viewed positively by the public?
The polling numbers that we see for the Prime Minister here is akin to the polling numbers in Taiwan before the lifting of the martial law back in 1990. So we will see things develop further after this election. But what it actually means is that people here does have some high hopes on the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is able to deliver on some of the key reforms, but that's just so. The impressions that people have of the political party, of the government, is significantly lower than that of the Prime Minister. So there's a lot of expectation, hopes riding on him and on his ability to deliver on them on this election. The slight problem that it may pose for the government is that it's a parliamentary system. They're not voting in for a president, but they're voting in for the political parties. So at the end of the day, the key question is, will the Prime Minister's popularity be able to overcome the suspicions that people have for the political party that he leads, or some of the weaker candidates that they will end up fielding in this election?
Tony, can you concede the point that things have changed, and in some cases, for the better?
I will concede that there were attempts to create a better impression. There were measures taken to improve things, but what we have seen to date was that the results have not been forthcoming. So we still see mega projects being awarded without any open tenders to certain parties. We still see many privatization exercises conducted without any transparency. And we still see issues such as crime being a major factor in many of our cities, and the police refusing to provide statistics to even parliamentarians today when it was actually available before. So many of the promises that has been made, there's been one step being taken forward, but we often see a two-step backward scenario.
Now, Nur Jazlan, if the opposition in fact wins this time around, what problems do you see? They're promising to clean up the country, clean up governance. What do you see?
Well, governing is a process that is complex, involves a lot of people, it takes a lot of time, and they are promising something with a short time frame that I think is unrealistic. I think what Ibrahim has said about the Prime Minister, about people having hope that he can actually try to change things, is a reflection of people's confidence in Najib as well. Because in the opposition, they can't decide who's going to become Prime Minister. One partner wants Anwar Ibrahim, one partner wants somebody else. And they can't decide on a lot of things which they have to put in place the minute they win government.
One of the big fears that the public has expressed in terms of voting for the opposition is the fact that within your coalition, there is an Islamic party that is pushing for Islamic law, specifically the hudud. We sent Drew Ambrose to look at this in more detail in one area of Malaysia that has the Islamic party experimenting with this, proposing this idea of the hudud law. Let's take a look.
PAS has ruled Kelantan, a staunchly Islamic Malaysian state, since 1990. They want to prescribe whippings and stonings for serious crimes.
Murder is very heinous crimes. Rapes is very heinous crimes. Robbery is very heinous crimes. And now, crime rate is increasing in Malaysia. The current law that we have is not able to cope with this crimes problem.
The policy now. Non-Muslim minorities say the proposal and local bylaws discriminate against them. Discos and gambling are banned. Pork and alcohol sales are limited. And they complain buildings must resemble mosques.
Everybody have to follow, like this Muslim architecture, must be a feature of all new buildings. That means if I'm Chinese, I want to own my own building, I want to have some Chinese cultural features, that is not allowed.
This hair salon was recently fined for female hairdressers cutting Muslim men's hair. Segregation is another issue here. This looks like any supermarket until you get to the checkout. There are counters for men and counters for women. According to the owners, it's a religious directive put forward by PAS. This sign in town informs women to wear a headscarf, and it goes further.
For example, female singers, they cannot perform in public.
Why not?
According to Islamic law, that you have to observe that because of the aura and so on.
To implement their ideas across Malaysia, PAS needs a parliamentary 2/3 majority, a scenario unlikely to happen for now.
Now I'm going to take a question here from Art in the audience. Art, you're in the middle here. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Webi Tony Pua. A key member of the People's Alliance, or the Opposition Alliance, is the Islamic Party of Malaysia, PAS. How far can the component party of the alliance agree on fundamental issues such as the Islamic State, Islamic fundamentalism, and the implementation of hudud law?
From a policy-making perspective, I sit in the policy board with the other component parties, and you would see that there's a lot of agreement in 95% of the issues that we raise, with the exception of the 5%, and these 5% do not get put into any manifesto until the three parties are able to achieve a consensus. So on this specific issue of hudud, we have discussed it many times. In fact, to the point where there's no reason to discuss it anymore, except to counter the propaganda from the mainstream papers, is that this issue does not arise currently for Pakatan Rakyat, and while DAP objects to the implementation of hudud, we respect PAS Party's position with hudud as one of the key tenets of Islam, and we will sit and discuss this further until such a time this issue or controversy does not arise.
We do have with us in the audience Khalid Samad, a senior member of PAS, the Islamic Party. How do you form a federal government when it's potentially a coalition of so many different ideologies? Are you willing to compromise on this issue of hudud law?
Well, I think coalition politics is quite simple and straightforward. What you have to do is that you can only implement policies which you have a consensus on. I've been to Germany, I've seen coalition politics in practice, and this is what is the basis of Pakatan Rakyat. On issues that we have a consensus on, then that's implemented. Those that we don't agree, then we agree to disagree.
And are you agreeing to disagree on the issue of hudud, that you're not going to push for that right now?
And at the same time, PAS will continue with its agenda in trying to get public support. And in the final analysis, all governments have to accept what the population and what the society wants. I mean, that's democracy. So whatever that we don't agree on, we'll refer to the public. We'll refer to the people.
Speaking of religion and politics, I'd like to take a question from Joshua. Joshua, are you here somewhere? Joshua, go ahead.
The question is, how open are both the parties in appointing a non-Muslim prime minister?
Everything is down to the Constitution. When it comes to appointing the prime minister, we have to obey the Constitution as well. On the question of whether it's possible for a non-Malay prime minister to be appointed, yes.
Tony, how would you answer this?
I think such an event on paper can happen, but it can only happen if the majority of Malaysians are able to accept such an outcome. So until such a time when the majority of Malaysians are able to accept such an outcome, we will see a prime minister from the Malay ethnic community.
Closing statements from the both of you. First one goes to Tony Pua. How can voters trust you to form a credible government?
I think the biggest difference between this current election and the previous election is the voters throughout the country, regardless of whether they stayed in Selangor, where it changed government the last round, or in Johor, where they did not change government, they can actually see the performance of Pakatan Rakyat state governments in action throughout the country. And that has allowed many voters, I think, to see that a change of government will not ruin the country. In fact, a change of government in many, many aspects will actually bring further advancements and development for the society in Malaysia. And I think that makes a big difference in the coming general elections.
Noor Jazlan, why shouldn't voters vote you out this time around?
We are the most prepared to run a government. We have a coalition of 13 parties. We have a very set way of doing things, which we are changing according to the people's wishes. The opposition can't even decide on their common manifesto. Are we going to become an Islamic state or not? Answer that question first, put it on paper, and then let the people trust you.
Noor Jazlan, Tony, Ibrahim, audience, thank you all for joining us. That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. You can always watch our program on Facebook, Twitter, on our webcast, as well as our podcast. From the whole team here in Kuala Lumpur, thank you very much for watching.